Hey, what is going on, Dave? How are you doing today, my man?
Dr. Joe, how the heck are you? It feels like it's been forever and it's been less than 48 hours.
I know it. I know it. That's what's so funny. We act like we haven't seen each other in a while, but that's the beauty of this whole thing. So we want to welcome our viewers and our listeners today to the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast. So I'm one of your hosts. I'm Dr. Joe Hamlett, and then here's my co-host, Dr. Dave Peltz. And again, we're so excited to be here with you today. So I'll jump right into it, Dave.
All right.
So today our topic is being grateful. And not just on holidays and things like that, but we've been sitting here talking and we all have a lot to be grateful for. So we wanted to kind of touch on that subject today. And like I say, not in terms of the holidays, Thanksgiving and Memorial Day, where we give thanks to others and things like that, but more just being grateful in general. So with that, Dave, I'll go ahead and toss it over to you, and you tell me a little bit about what you, how you see being grateful, how that is of value to you in
Thanks,
everyday
Joe.
life.
Yeah, this is a good one. You know, to your point, this is not about the holidays. We can't emphasize that enough because there's so much to be grateful for every day. Even in our worst moments, there's still a tremendous amount to be grateful for because things
Right,
can always be worse than what they are. Even if things are if you're at rock bottom, there's still things to be grateful for because no matter what, you can always pull yourself out. You might need some help,
right,
which is perfectly fine, very acceptable, appreciated, and we should actually embrace those opportunities because for me, I know when things get tough or what, I've had some pretty low points in my life. Sometimes it's hard to be grateful and sometimes it's hard to be appreciative and say thank you. And this is very much about embracing and accepting those compliments that help and being grateful for those things that people are offering because so much of our lives we take care of other people, we help other people, and it can be tough to accept that help in return because we're used to being caregivers or those mentors and coaches and leaders and managers or good peers and friends and helping others. That's great, but there's also times when we need that, and sometimes it's hard to be able to take that hat off and be gracious and acceptant of other people's help. And that's what really this conversation's about today is to say, hey, yes, we are very blessed and very grateful to be here every day, no matter what, no matter how good or bad things are. There's just a tremendous amount in each one of our lives to be grateful for. And that's really what we want to focus in on this conversation today is to just to be thankful for the different situations. I can recall in my past where, obviously helping people, and
right,
someone will offer me a compliment. Again, in the past, they offered me a compliment, and I was like, oh, thanks. But, and it's like, as soon as you say, but, you've just dismissed their compliment,
right,
and they're showing respect and appreciation for you. And by dismissing it, it's kind of a slap in the face to them.
right,
It's like, why is this person not accepting of this compliment? A simple thank you is all that's needed. But
right,
don't say thank
right,
you, but
right, right. Well, Dave, you touched on something earlier as you started, and the biggest thing is you talked about being grateful for what you have and where you are, because a lot of times we take for granted where we are. We take for granted what we have. When you get in those low points, like you said, and you start, kind of uh, you know, making
self-defeating.
yourself self-defeating, making yourself a victim.
Yeah,
And then if you really think about it, where you are, you might be much better than somebody else in a worse situation.
yeah,
So being grateful for who you are, what you have today, because the next thing is it's not promised. Tomorrow's not promised. So
yeah,
being grateful for what you have today and where you are today, um, is what we should strive for, because again, we may think that we're in the lowest of lows, but there's somebody or other people out there that are in much worse off situations than we are. So being grateful for what you have today, who you are, and then like you said, being grateful for those people that are, you know being nice to you, being kind to you, and not taking that for granted as well, because we never know what other people are going through. So for you to disregard, their compliment or their sincerity, could be a huge impact to them or a blow to them.
Yeah,
So accepting those compliments, those encouragements from others is also just as important as you being humble and being present, being in the moment,
yeah.
and again accepting. Um, Man, I'm totally off track.
No, that's good. When as you're discussing the topic, a couple of things came to me, and that's, you know, sometimes we get in a place in our lives and we're thinking, wow, this sucks, or, this is rock bottom, or, wow, I wish there was more. And sometimes we need to just stop, pause, and step back for a moment and realize that maybe where we are right now today, at this very moment, is where we are supposed to be.
Right.
Whether it's
Yep.
because,
Yep.
if you're spiritual, religious or not, whether it's God or Allah or whoever you pray to or don't pray to, maybe you're at right where you are at this very moment because this is where you're supposed to be.
Right.
And, I say that with a lot of conviction because, you hear about other people and they're like, wow, look at them. And all of a sudden there's an accident or they lose their job or something, just where it's like the emergency brake was put on, and they skid to a
Right.
screeching halt. But it's for a reason. And maybe it was because they were going too fast and needed to slow down. Maybe, I've talked to people that told me about things that happened to them, and they're like, yeah, and there was this accident. And it's like, oh my gosh, is everything okay? Yeah, you won't believe this. When I went to the hospital, they found out that because of the accident, they actually found something much worse. And that accident
Right.
actually
Yep.
saved my life.
Yep.
And it's kind of like, it's like, wow, or you think, wow, I'm running 15 minutes late for work, because my kids or my dogs or the lock didn't work. I couldn't start the car. And then you get at halfway to work, you see that there's an accident. And you're like, well, that's didn't just happen. I didn't watch it. That must have happened about 15 minutes ago. Well,
Right.
what would
Right.
have happened if I would have left 15 minutes ago? Could I have been involved in that accident? I'll even tell a little bit of a personal story. We went on vacation last year over the holiday, and we got off to a late start. We were 30 minutes late leaving we stayed over at a city outside of LA, and we were about 30 minutes late, and we took a little bit of a side trip through Southern California, and we were thinking, man, the traffic has gotten really bad. We were halfway to our destination and it backed up, it come to a complete stop. And when we got up there was a boulder the size of a truck in the middle of the road. And I started doing the math, and it's like, wow, that was about 30 minutes
Right.
offset the timing. So I'm not saying we would have been hit by that boulder that fell
Right.
down the
Right.
road, but we would have been a lot closer to it.
Right. Right.
So,
Right.
we really had kind of an aha moment on that trip that, wow, we really need to be grateful, because if we would have been going to our schedule, really forcing things, what could have happened? We don't know. Maybe nothing,
Right. Right.
probably nothing.
Right.
But it does give you a little bit of a reality check.
Right.
And, several years ago, um, I was laid off from one of my jobs that I had. And, I was like, wow, this is not good. But what it did is it allowed me the opportunity to write several books. And that's when you and I had met, and you're like, Dave, write the book. Well,
Right.
that was my
Right.
opportunity. And I wrote the book. I've written several others. But, there again, it's like, just because it seems bad in that exact moment doesn't mean it's a bad thing. There's
Right.
other
Right.
opportunities. And I had to be grateful, because I honestly believe that was God's way of saying, hey, we need to redirect you. And then after taking on a crazy teaching schedule for a couple of years, I'll admit I was getting a little burned out. But then I wound up rushing myself to the emergency room. My appendix had ruptured,
Wow.
and it's like, talk about, pulling the emergency brake. That was about an 8-week pause in everything I was doing,
Right. Right.
so things do happen for a reason. And I don't know why they happen the way they do, but we do have to be grateful. You just don't know.
Right. And you bring up a good point where you talked about, we think we should be somewhere, and then God maybe pauses, or something jumps in front of us and tells us, no, that's not what you're supposed to be doing. So again, in your scenario or your case where you were laid off, you're able to do some other things. And I think that's the power of really accepting that where you are and being
Yeah.
grateful for where you are today. Because like you said, if you start looking at it logically, you start to figure out the timing was just right for this. Or if it wasn't just right, you can make it just right. Because
Yeah.
instead of going doom and gloom and saying, oh, woe is me, why did this happen to me, you change it, you flip the script. And
Yeah.
instead of being a victim, become a victor by seizing the moment, by
Yeah.
taking advantage of that situation.
It's about
uh,
perspective, really
exactly,
understanding instead of just
exactly.
focusing on that particular sliver of time, thinking a
That
little
you
bit,
may think is bad, and
and
again,
maybe it is, but what else is going on that's
right,
that
right.
turns that into a positive, to your point.
Absolutely. So I agree with you that, yeah, the your situation can be bleak. It can, remain negative, but I think that's also the time, like you said, change that perspective, change that, um, what you end up doing with that and making it a positive thing. Like you say, your
Mhm.
appendix burst, and that wasn't a pleasant thing, but in the meantime, you were able to do some other things. So very similar to me, I think of a scenario when we were back in California, and then we moved, from California to Missouri. And shortly after, the freeway that I traveled every day to work, they actually had an earthquake, and
Oh.
part of that freeway collapsed. And
Mm.
and so people lost their lives. And kind of like you said, maybe I wouldn't be going to work that day. Or, maybe it's totally out of the time that I would have been using that freeway. But the idea that I could have potentially been there on that freeway when that happened. So
Mhm.
again, just being grateful for the timing of that. Uh, you know, Sorry for all those people that lost their lives. But
Absolutely.
it's at the same time, like you say, maybe it could have been me. And so just being grateful for even being able to even recall that or even think about that. So you're
Yes.
right. It's all about how we view it, all about how we, accept those results, how we change those results or alter those results or the moment, but being grateful and then
And our
seeing how we can
perspective
make
in
it a
those
positive.
moments. Yeah.
Yes.
Another anecdote, I was doing, I had a client, and one of the individuals I was interviewing for this particular project had told me, it shared their story, and they said that, they were struggling, and they found it, finding solid full-time work, and they finally found a job, and they were there for about 3 years. And the person wasn't, admittedly, by that person, that individual, they were not probably the best employee for the company, but they were okay. Um, there was a couple, I don't know, we'll call it late for work type thing, and
Right.
the managers felt that it just wasn't working out, and they let the person go. And the person was very upset. They had a family, they didn't know what to do. They had been struggling for several years finding work. They finally had work, were kind of struggling at that employer, and the person was beside themselves. And they stated that, it was a cordial separation of employment. The individual understood why, was not happy, obviously, but within 6 months, the person was actually hired into a much better position, a much better fit, bringing in more income in a position that they are much happier with. So, again, about being grateful for that moment, not burning bridges, not being mad at
Right.
people,
Right.
understanding that, everyone has a job to do, and that there's a silver lining. And it gave that person
Right.
time to reflect and to consider other options. And it actually worked out to be better for them. I'm going to switch gears a little bit, kind of what we'd started to talk about. Let's talk about compliments and giving and receiving compliments, and being grateful, expressing gratefulness to others, and receiving gratefulness from others. A lot of times people are kind of a strange animal. Sometimes, well, not sometimes, it's been shown that we're more likely to say, hey, don't go to that XYZ place because of XYZ reason, because they are just not good.
Right.
We're 10, was it something like 10 times more likely to share a bad experience than a good
Right.
experience.
Yep. Yep.
But that being said, why not share those positive experiences? What's the benefit to that? Well, it's increased business, it's increased revenue, increased visibility, increased income, increased happiness, potentially increased recognition. There's a lot of positive things that come out of being grateful and expressing gratefulness. You don't have to buy anything, you don't have to give anything. It's just taking that moment to say thank you or issuing a compliment to someone. Wow, nice boots, nice hat, nice jacket. Wow, thank you so much. The food was great. The service was wonderful. How does that make you feel when you receive a compliment like that? It makes you feel good. So, what is it really costing us? It costs us about 3 to 5 seconds out of our day to issue a
Right.
compliment and to be grateful for other people and express that gratefulness. And on the other side, it only takes 3 to 5 seconds to say, wow, thank you so much, Joe. I really appreciate that. I can't tell you how much it really made my day. 3 to 5 seconds, and
Right.
we can literally change the world one compliment at a time that way, and being grateful for that. So, what are your thoughts on being grateful from a complimentary or just issuing or receiving compliments?
David, it's like you said, it's only 3 to 5 seconds to compliment, and then maybe to you know say something
Acknowledge,
to
yeah,
that effect. Yes, acknowledge people. But what's funny is we don't do it. It literally only takes 3 to 5 seconds. No skin off your teeth. No hard sell anything. It just
yeah,
takes you saying the words, and most often we don't do it. So
yeah.
that really
Especially in the workplace. I mean, we're
right,
more apt
right,
to say, "Thank you. The food was so good" when we go to a
right,
restaurant. But
right.
what do we do in the work environment with our employees, peers, subordinates, or leaders? How
But
often do
but
we you hear that?
I think in that environment, we're so adept to uh, quickly discounting that as part of your job. So it does not require an additional acknowledgement or a kudos for a job well done, which in
Almost
reality
taking
it
people for
should.
granted.
Right, and that was where I was going. We have gotten to the point where, it's just expected. So, we take people for granted, but you're absolutely right. So somebody sent me an email the other day saying that how I was an inspiration to them by what I was
Wow,
doing.
that's
And so
awesome.
I mean, I almost teared up just because, like you said, we don't hear it enough. And it was so heartfelt that I had to respond to them and tell them, thank them, and acknowledge that for them too, because again, to just dole it out and not receive anything in return is also kind of a foul thing to do too. So, but yeah, just that really made my day.
Yeah,
And just for somebody to acknowledge that, what I was doing was affecting them or impacting them in a positive way. So you're right. Why can't we do that more often? And so even when we first got on our podcast today, and I was really excited because I think that's what it's all about: acknowledging people, being grateful for where you are, what you have, and a lot of times on our podcast when we first start, I say, grateful for being here, or another day, the sun is shining, I can see it,
yeah,
and that's the truth, because I said it earlier, tomorrow's not promised. So take advantage of all these, beautiful days and these experiences that you
yeah.
have, because tomorrow you may not be here. And so back to your point, why don't we do that more often? That's a really good question. But like I
Well,
said,
and I think
I try and do my part. When I see people, I say, "Hey, how are you doing?" But for me, that's just been um, I've heard it so much from subordinates,
mhm,
being in a leadership position, especially in the military. And when you ask that young airman in this case, what would you like to see from your leaders? And the most common statement was, we'd like to see you acknowledge us.
acknowledgement,
I- i- you
not
know
even so much recognition, but
no,
acknowledgement.
acknowledge when
Yeah,
exactly when you're walking down the hall, and again, that senior leader is busy, and that young airman walks by and says, "Hey, how you doing, chief?" or "How you doing, sir?" or "Ma'am." and you don't
Don't
even
even
acknowledge
acknowledge. It's
them.
just like
You
you're
don't
not
raise
even
from your
there.
paper or don't even
Yeah.
see them. And so I made it a huge point every time I walked by somebody. Even today, I still walk by. Hey, how you doing? When me and my wife were at the store yesterday, and a gentleman, we were in his way. He was trying to reach over. Said, he said, "Hey, how you doing?" I said, "Hey, how you doing? Sorry,
Hmm.
we're in your way." I mean, just
Yeah.
that jovial,
Yeah.
hey, acknowledgement that, hey, we're kind of in each other's way, but let's have fun with. So it's just that. Um, Acknowledging other people, again, being grateful for every breath that you have, and then approaching life that way. And that's the way I choose to do it. So I don't remember names a lot,
Yeah.
but I do see a lot of people. And so, when I walk by people, I say, hey, how are you doing? And again, they may look at me like, who is that guy? And I may say the same thing, but I'm still going to acknowledge that I just walked by
Right.
you. That I saw you, I see you. And I think that's the most important thing. Yeah, is
Yeah. You
being,
said something just now that's really important. I see you.
yes,
You're acknowledging them. And when you issue a compliment, you know, add a little bit of specificity to it. I can't tell you how many times in my career I've been walking down the hallway, doing my own thing, and all of a sudden, hey, great job. And I look up and it's like, I turn around and all I see is the back of someone. I don't know if they were talking to me. I
right,
don't know if they were
right,
talking on the phone, or they had headphones on or something. Maybe
earbuds,
they were
yeah,
singing a song. I don't know.
right,
But or coming up to a peer and pat on the shoulder, shaking it, good job, and then they walk away. It's like, good job for what? Because I
right,
showed up to
right,
work, because of a project.
yeah,
So offer a little clarifying dialogue in that 3 to 5 seconds. It's like,
right,
think about when you're at a restaurant. Hey, great job. When you tell the server, it's like, great job for what? The service, the food, the price, my
right,
hair,
right,
outfit. What are we talking about here? The cleanliness of the store. It's like, so, I always, if someone does a great job in a restaurant, hey, you really provide great service, or compliments to the chef. The food
right,
is exceptional.
right,
That sort of thing. It allows them to carry it back to someone. If you say, hey, tell the chef, good job for plating, for the quality of food, for the portion of food, for the
right,
pricing of food.
right,
What are we talking about here?
right. No, that's a good point, being specific, because you're right. I've been in those same situations too, where you're not sure what people are talking about, what they're referring to, whether they're on the
Glasses? Who knows?
phone. Yeah, I mean, those cool glasses. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's so you're right. If you're going to go to the time and effort to acknowledge them for something, yeah, make sure it's specific enough so that they can walk away saying, "Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense." Versus, what were they talking about? I mean, is it my shoes? I mean, I know I just got these. So you're right.
Do I finally have some fashion sense? I don't know.
Right. But I think that's what it still comes down to, the comment that you highlighted too, that I see you. I think that's the most important thing, because I can't tell you, I've seen people down. I'll say, hey, how's it going? And they still don't want to talk. And, so what, you start to kind of probe a little bit, and you realize, they were having a bad day, or, you know, so for me, being an introvert, I still find the time and effort to engage with people, and try and help them, maybe to see some light for that moment or that time. So yeah, just being grateful for what you have, and maybe being able to share that with other people. I think that's very important. So um
Yeah, you mentioned probing a little bit. How many times we've offered a compliment to people and they just kind of blow it off. This
right,
happened several times, but to your point, maybe they're having a bad day at
right,
work or at
right,
home or with their kids, or with, maybe they've got some other struggles that they're dealing with, family. We don't know. And I've provided a compliment, showed appreciation for other people, and they kind of shrugged it off, only to have them come up later, either hours or a couple of days later, and apologize for not being appreciative of the compliment. And
right,
they
right,
apologized. Hey, Dave, I just want to say I was sorry. I appreciate the compliment. I just wasn't in a good place. I've got some other stuff going on. So when we issue that compliment and display that act of gratefulness, we should not expect anything in return. That's not
right,
about
right.
what
Yeah,
it's about. It's about
exactly. Right,
appreciating the other person, not wanting something in return. And,
Right. Right.
that's really where the beautifulness of being grateful comes into play, because it's a selfless act.
Right.
If
Right.
it's not selfless, then you're not being grateful and appreciative.
Right.
So, really just embracing people in that moment, for that moment, and sharing just a few seconds of your day can really change their day. Let's talk about receiving gratefulness. That's a tough one for a lot of people. I mean, we're so used to, okay, I can give a compliment. Okay, I'll work on that. Yeah, I do that. I'll add this a few clarifying statements in there.
Right.
You know,
Right.
but receiving compliments can be so much harder. Or receiving someone else's act of gratefulness. It could be you lost your job, and someone's coming over to say, hey, I've got a couple of leads or opportunities for you. And maybe it's not the exact lead or opportunity that you're wanting, but it's something that they're giving you something that they didn't have to. There was no obligation. Or you move into a new neighborhood and a neighbor comes over with a plate of food that you didn't ask them for. That's them showing random acts of kindness to welcome you to the community. They're appreciating you. They're being grateful for you moving in, and we should be grateful in return, even if it's a thank you. The challenge is when we accept these compliments or these acts of gratefulness from other people, is to do just that. Accept them for what they are. We're a lot of people, and I'm guilty of this too. We diminish that
Right.
thankfulness or
Right.
the appreciation by adding that, hey Joe, thanks. But you know what? And right there, I've said thank you, and I slapped you across the face in the same moment. It's like, just stop with thank you. If you can't think of anything else to say, just say thankful and just let it go. Don't add a but, don't add anything else, just say thank you. If you
So
want
so
to, yeah, go ahead.
so Dave, that's you just mentioned the part about the gratefulness, but accepting it for what it is. That's a challenge,
It
and
is.
you mentioned it that it's a challenge for you, because a lot of times I'm kind of the opinion, or to me it sometimes hit me that it's a consolation. Like you
Mhm.
say, you did say you didn't get the job that you wanted, but then they have some leads to help you, and at that time you're not really ready to to receive that, because you just
Correct.
received that, that bad news that you didn't get what you wanted, and so now again it feels like a consolation. So
There
that's the
is
one that
that. That's a
I'm
good point.
yeah, that's the one I still try to overcome, because that is a challenge. And so for us just to say, hey, accept it, and that is difficult for most
True.
people. So I just wanted to highlight that again. We want to be thankful, we want to be grateful, but it is a challenge.
Timing is a critical
It's
thing.
a
You
big
can't,
part of it. Yeah,
yeah, you
exactly.
can't slap someone in the face and say, good job. Hey Joe, we're letting you go. You're fired. Hey,
Right.
great
Yeah.
job working for us. It's like
A lot of it, yeah,
mixed
has to do with
message.
timing, like you said.
Yeah.
But in my case, in the past, it's been, hey, you didn't get this, but we can offer you this.
Yeah.
And so
And I,
at that
and I would
time,
offer in that sort of situation, it's probably not genuine. It's like you said, it's a
right,
consolation, it's a
right,
check
yeah,
the box,
yeah,
you know, versus a genuine compliment. Even if we're down in the dumps, a simple, just say thank you. If you can't think of anything else to say, just
right,
say thank
right,
you,
right.
and then
And
revisit
and
that
and and,
moment later.
and
Yeah,
and that's exactly the way I handle it. I don't let off that. I feel like it's a consolation. I do say, well, thank you. I really do appreciate it. Just so, like you said, you don't negate. Maybe their intention was genuine, so you don't negate that. For them, that they would think they were really offering you something, but for you, it didn't feel that way. But to come off again as, hey, yeah, this thanks. For the offer, and I really appreciate it. And that's what I've done in the past. Again, then I have to go back and process it myself. And then a lot of times I think of it as, yeah, the timing wasn't right, but then we go back and really think about it and where you're at, and then you go back to that. Well, I didn't get it. There was a reason, and
yeah,
then I look at it that way, and I'm able to flip it to a positive situation. But in the moment, sometimes it's hard to, control that initial
sure.
thought or response that you want to have. So again, we all we understand if that's not the easiest thing to do, and it's not. So I just wanted to make sure we touched on that yeah, because we're not robots. We're not gonna, we have those same feelings that everybody else does. So just to come off as it's easy to accept, no, it's not in a lot of cases. But today's point, if we can, not negate or take away from that person that again may have really been trying to, and their intent was to offer some type of alternative that, to some situation. So for them, it may have been very clean and very really positive on their approach, but in our eyes, it doesn't get received that way. So we just want to acknowledge that we also experience that as well. So
Yeah. So in the last few moments, I'm going to provide a few closing thoughts, and I'll turn it back
okay.
over to you. Along with being grateful, I'm going to pull that thread just a little bit more. So if we bring into maybe a situation that's a little bit more, I'm going to say common, providing thanks to like first responders, medical personnel, law enforcement, military, being veterans ourselves, that was always a tough thing to accept or to reply to or acknowledge. And a lot of us have had at least moments of training throughout our career in those career fields, and on the proper response. And a lot of what's come out of that over the years, not saying this is what's happening at this exact moment, was just simply saying, thank you, I appreciate that. That's been kind of a somewhat standard response to, especially those serving in tenuous, we'll call them tenuous or potentially very challenging work environments like that. I remember when I was in, how do you respond to that? Thank you for your service. Well, this kind of sucks doing what I'm doing right now, but thank you. And it's just, they're trying to show appreciation and be grateful for us. And really the easiest response is thank you, I appreciate that. And just letting it go. You don't have to have any other dialogue or anything. Just
absolutely.
Thank you, and acknowledging them. And that's really kind of the simplicity of it. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Joe.
All right. Thanks, Dave. We've had a good time, enjoyed talking about being grateful. So out there, our viewers and listeners, make sure you take to heart when people are being grateful and gracious to you and acknowledging you. And by the same token, also, like Dave said, it only takes 3 to 5 seconds typically to show your gratefulness. So with that, we want to thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast. Until next time, you continue being your not so ordinary you.